being claiming to have taxing authority at all. Whether it's a penny or whether it's more than a penny, the principle remains the same. If there is no counter or rebuttal to their position, which it has not been, particularly with our people, and particularly with many people among our people who have been involving the lives of our people in organizations, clubs, institutions, whether they're religious, political, etc., that have not informed them of these fundamentals. The evidence is it's self-evident once you have a concept of what we're talking about tonight, that there are two things: disingenuous or incompetent, or a combination of the two. And the fact of the matter is, when someone is in a position of authority or in a position of scholarly leadership, keep this in mind, that ignorance of these principles are no excuse and are never to be excused. However, because over the generations they have been excused, because they're usually hiding behind words that we respect, such as Buddha, Confucius, Allah, Muhammad, Jesus, etc. And our people get starry-eyed and not thinking that these people are really parasitic in their operations with you, distinguished from actually serving you or helping you in any manner. So a bill of particulars is one nature of writ which should be standardized in all communities, and particularly in the Aboriginal communities of Moors who have been falsely tagged and with nom de guerre, such as Negro, Black, Colored, etc. All of those are nom de guerre. Keep that in mind. And nom de guerre are essentially what is also known in the vernacular of servitude as slave, and that's connotative, slave tags or brands. And because many of our people have not been schooled in basic etymology, those are basic grammatical skills, they're not aware that many of these things or words and terms that we have taken for granted were actually nom de guerre, and no one informed you. Meanwhile, many of these people who should have informed you are always talking about gods and devils every 2 minutes, and yet are void of basic elementary comprehension of operations of civilization that operate on this planet since time immemorial. And it's not to condemn or to knock or to negatively put down or criticize people who have been subjected to that mind control system. However, we cannot continue to sacrifice generations by not telling them the truth of how things actually have been operating. And so that their energies, their finances, their time, their services, and their honor can no longer be stolen and abused or misused by people claiming to be their so-called leaders or spiritual guides or preachers or imams or rabbis or etc., whatever titles of abbotship that they may carry. That's not condemning the abbotship principle. It is, by the way, condemning those who have watched the people suffer and have been playing it safe, or what you would, I would prefer to say, not wanting to rock the boat while pretending that they fear no one but God, fear no one but Allah, fear no one but Jesus, etc., while guiding the people or misguiding the people who have, they themselves, who've also been taxing, whether they call it tithe or not. Tithe is a Roman tax. That's where the word tithe comes from. And then not telling them the truth about how things have been operating and how and why they've been suffering at the hands of people who have been de facto and fraudulently and impersonating and occupationally claiming to be government and have been causing damage to families for generations. A bill of particulars is one writ that is in the nature of the quo warranto, but also in the nature of discovery. So write that down too, discovery. And so that's in your frame of reference too. So I'm going to share with you an actual bill of particulars. I'm not going to read all of it because it's actually 6 pages. And this was constructed in August in the August moon in the of 2014 AD, 1434 MC, etc. And it comes like this: legally hyphen lawfully competent colon. And I won't use the brother's name or appellation at this time. And we have his appellation and his ex relation, or the estate name that is used by the corporate operators in their straw operations of taxation. And of course, many of you already know by law, to reclaim the heritable positions that were lost during forced servitude, which is known as the straw, that by virtue of honoring your mothers and fathers, the political and civil operations of restoring that proper status is referred to as nationalization. That's universal on the planet. Whether you're dealing with the construct of the political order itself, the constitutional political order of any nation state, and or the people's true nationals or so-called citizens of a particular nation, specified, specific, and established for the fact and for the record, never assumed. Therefore, as an example, if someone is claiming to be a nation of any type on planet Earth and don't teach nationality, it's immediately made aware to anyone that understands principles of civilization that such persons are committing a fraud against the people. I.e., it's sort of like anyone who's claiming to feed people and taking finance from people, talking about agriculture and talking about being farmers, and then not teaching horticulture and farming to the people who they're taking finance from, and they have them in these organizations for decades and talking about feeding the poor and uplifting the young, and then don't teach them these things. A being who knows what these things are knows that such persons are committing a fraud against the people. And thus, in order for people in organized bodies politics, which happens all across the planet, which you see nations and nation states, etc., and if they're void in the operations of nationality at any point in their relationship to others, they can be and usually are made subject to mistreatments, abuses, economic deprivation, estate theft. It's also called cheating, which constantly goes on in targeted communities at North America, often called gentrification and things like that. That's a diversionary statement for cheating of estates. Keep that in mind. So a bill of particular issued by yourselves or your family members or anyone who comprehends fundamental, this is keep in mind, fundamental civics. We're not talking about anything complex, fundamental. But because people have not been familiar, it may seem not so familiar with many of you. However, get familiar with it. So we're going to go into this bill of particulars. I wish you could see directly this because we've been so busy, actually around here, very busy, that we haven't had time to post some of this. And because it's private, it's another reason that we didn't post it. and Dr. Nail may share it with you in the future with the nomen and the appellation marked out, but the principles of the structure will be there for you to analyze and for you to critique, as well as for you to use as a, not necessarily as a template, but a template in concept, even if you expand on it or reduce it in order to counter any claim of any beings that claim to be tax collectors in any sort of any type in relationship to you, the natural being, or your estate, etc. So keep in mind this while we're going through this bill of particulars. Private properties are not lawfully taxable. So keep that in mind. All taxed private property, like your homes, your houses, your cars, etc., was, and is theft and a fraud from the door, and is part of the problem. The bill of particulars, for those who know, is one of the instruments that is used to counter such fraudulent beings who have been criminally using the platform of government to actually extort, rob, cheat people by the day. And they've been getting away with it for generations. Bill of particulars. Legally, lawfully competent. Appellation of the being that's sending this out, with a notation of the ex relation nomen that is used in everyday affairs, often known as the straw. In propria persona and solo proprio, juris consults. Moorish American, free white person, lawful heirs, natural freeholders, by birthright, non-U.S. citizens, demandants, non-demandants, non-U.S. citizen. That's very important, because part of the operations that they're classifying the people as U.S. citizen, which is actually a stock designation, not a designation of natural living beings. And people have not been made aware of that, which is also why they never have. Whenever you see them dealing with people that come from other territories, etc., and they'll say U.S. citizen, but they will not issue a nationality card, because the U.S. is not a nation. It's a private, foreign, for-profit, actually human trafficking corporation. And it always has been from the door. And it's de facto in every aspect. Unfortunate truth, but it is nevertheless the truth. Handle it. I know it's uncomfortable for some of you who have been miseducated, misdirected, but it, however, is the truth. The truth is for everyone. However, many don't want the truth. But for those who want the truth, I'm glad that you're spending a little time with us here at the House of Reawakening Minds, and we will share it with you. The reference of this notice of bill of particular is a reference of quote unquote 29, bill of attainder 10,000 in specie, lawful money, mark, letter of marque for international tort and violations of treaty. 1786, 1787, 1836, Treaty of Peace and Friendship, Moroccan Empire. The treaty was sealed at Morocco with the seal of the Emperor of Morocco, June 23rd, 1786. Now keep in mind, when you're making reference to the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, you actually have multiplicity of treaties that actually come under that banner, etc. So whether you're talking about the J Treaty and other treaties, etc., Treaty of Tripoli, all of them are related. So keep that in mind. So you have multiple territories under the Moroccan Empire that span from the eastern hemisphere of the planet into the western hemisphere of the planet. And when you're making that reference, you're talking treaty enforcement. And when you're talking treaty enforcement, you're talking constitutional enforcement. They are looked at and comprehended by all people in government and all true scholars as one and the same instrumentality in obligatory nature. This is why they do not teach civics to particular people who have been targeted under the Christian black codes and who agree to be black under those codes and have been abused for centuries by their consent of being something or claiming to be who and what they are not. The other problem that you have is people have confused their organizations, their clubs, their little prayer institutions, and have contaminated themselves spiritually by equating the little social solace systems that men have created, confusing them with your pedigree or your bloodline, your birthright, divine crystal stream that runs from your heart through your body, given to you by your mother, which is your nationality, which stands supreme and is not to be equated with the clubs that you may belong to, whether you call them Muslim, Christian, Jew, or whatever tag that you put on them, has nothing at all or whatsoever to do with divine operations from the source of creation, etc., which is not to be contaminated. So therefore, your concept of operations, your concept of thinking are to be contrary to anything that corrupts the blood. So there shall be no corruption of blood. And also look at that as a phrase, corruption of blood. And then look that up, because that's another subject matter in its own right. And so this instrument is also a countermeasure to corruption of blood. The straw man operations is designed for corruption of blood. The different pharmaceutical operations established by the hybrid Europeans to inject into the bloodstreams of the people is a corruption of blood and an indirect attempt to distort and to remove you from descendability by virtue of putting a patent on your actual physical blood by virtue of injecting you with patented instrumentality of things that they have called many names that are alleging to make your life better, but are actually designed to steal your birthright. And that is not discussed. And also, if you go in that area, they will block that information because they really still, on multiple levels, do not want the people to recognize that when they interject foreign substance within your bloodstream by any format, they're also in the background creating bonds against it and on patents and claiming